give you an overview of what we have talked about so far. We have talked about Visualforce. So on Visualforce we talked about markups and controllers, right? And if you remember, we talked about 4 types of controllers: standard, standard list, custom, and extension. So we have already talked about the standard controller and the standard list controller. Now the next thing that we are going to talk about is custom controller. Before we can understand custom controller, we have to understand a simple thing, that custom controller is completely defined by us. So we write all the logics. In standard controller we had to do nothing. We just had to say standard controller equals to account, and then we could connect the you know, page with a particular table, with accounts table. If I write standard controller equals to opportunity, I could connect my page with the opportunity table or opportunity object, right? But that is not the case with a custom controller. In custom controller you can write all your own logics, whatever you feel, whatever logics you have, you can write everything on a custom controller. Okay, so how will you write all those things? Which language will you use for that? We are going to use Apex for that. Okay, Apex is the language which I will use for writing instructions to my Salesforce. Okay, so let's get started on this. So first thing that I'm going to talk about is the data types of Apex. Hey, can you hear me now? Hello? Hi, can you hear me now? Yeah, Thanks.
Yeah, Jeet, we can.
Okay, great. So we are just going to talk about the basics of Apex. Okay, basics of Apex. First thing which we are going to talk about is the data types. Any programming language has a few data types, and we're going to understand what data types are supported within Apex. Okay. So first is primitives. Primitives is the data type which you find in any other language as well. This includes strings, integers, uh, double, long, decimal, things like this. Date, date, time. So all these are primitive data types. I think you might have used it or heard of these things in other programming languages also. Okay, string, integer, these kind of things. Okay. The other data type that is used in Salesforce is SObject. So primitive is pretty simple, something like string A equals hello. It's defined like this. Okay, or you say integer I equals 100. Okay, so this is how primitives are defined, and this is quite common. The other data type which is specific to Salesforce is SObject. What is this object? SObject stands for Salesforce object. So this data type basically refers to a record in Salesforce object. Instead of referring to a single data type, it refers to a record in one of the Salesforce objects. That is what an SObject is. So it refers to a record in Salesforce object. Like account A or opportunity O. Now this A is a record in account. O is a record in opportunity. Okay. Got it? Something like this. And then you can say equals new account. Now A will have all the fields. A dot name equals, let's say, IBM. A dot industry equals technology. A dot revenue equals 500 million. This way. Got it? Or the other way of writing similar thing is like opportunity, this equals to new opportunity, name equals, so instead of writing it this way in multiple lines, you could have written it inside this also. Name equals opportunity 1, amount equals 20,000, stage equals prospecting, right? So these are all SObjects. Clear? Got this thing? So we have primitives and then we have SObjects. Now the next thing that we have here is our primitives as objects. The next is list. Okay, what is list? So everyone clear with this object? Let me know if you have any question with this object. So because we are going to deal with the database that we have in Salesforce, we are also going to deal with the records from our database, and to do that we need a subject data type. So account A, opportunity O, or contact C, these sort of things, whatever. So here the data type is going to be the table name. Like here you put the data type as string or integer and all that stuff. In S object you are going to put the data type as a table name. So Salesforce will understand that A is a record from account. This refers to a record from account. Or O is a record from opportunity. Got that thing? Clear on this? Now the next thing that we're going to talk about is the list. Next we are going to talk about list. What is a list? List is ordered collection of primitives or S objects. You must have heard of array, right? It is one terminology used for array. So multiple values like string, color, colors equals new, list you define like this, list of string, colors. Now this is not one single string, this is collection of strings, right? Then you say new list of string, and here you would say red, green, pink, violet. So now this colors is set of strings, list of strings. Got it? So that is what a list is. You can also write the same thing in a different manner. You can write it like this also. So instead of writing list of strings, you can write it like this also. This also means the same. Same thing, means the same. Got it? Okay. So for account, we have to do this. I can say the list of for accounts. If I have to say this, I have to say list of account and equals select name industry from account where industry equals technology. Let's say this statement, select statement. Okay, so this will return multiple records, and my variable is also a list. Okay, the variable type is also a list of accounts. So this can now hold all the accounts from the technology industry. Alright. So that is how this list thing works. Now let me take this example, the first example. Now this is collection of strings that I can understand, that we can see. There is not one single string here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 different strings here, right? Red, green, pink, violet. So collection of string we can understand. What is this ordered thing? Why does it say ordered collection of primitives or S objects? What does this ordered collection mean? Ordered collection simply means that every value in this list has an index number. Okay? Every value in this list has an index number and they are identified using the indices, which means red has an index number and this index number starts from 0. So the index number for red is 0, green is 1, pink is 2, violet is 3. So you don't get to see it, you don't write it also on the program, but by default the system considers an index number for each of the value inside a list. The first record which gets into the list gets the index number 0, the second one gets the index number 1, 2, 3, so on. Okay? Which means if I add one more red here, okay, now I have told you that every value will have an index number and the records are identified by indices. Now do you think this red and the first red will be considered duplicate? Think on it and let me know. Do you think these two values should be considered duplicates or they will be considered as two different values? Any one of you?
It's two different values.
Okay, why two different values? What is the logic behind that?
First one it will assign it as a, that list of 0 and the last one is list of 5.
4, right. Absolutely correct. So the identification is not happening on what is written here. Identification is happening on their index number. So these two will be considered as two different values. Okay. So this is the concept of a list. So whenever you are trying to create a collection where you want to allow the duplicates, sometimes it happens now I want to allow the duplicate values, and that case you will use a list. Okay. In the list, the actual value is not used for identification. The index number is used for identification, and everything that enters into the system has an index number, or everything that gets into that list has an index number. So this red and this red are different. This is index 0, this is index 4. So for system, these are two different values and both of them will coexist. Okay. So if you are clear with this concept, the next concept that we are going to talk about is a set. Set is unordered collection of S objects. So what is a set? Set is an unordered collection of S objects or primitives. Sorry, primitives or S objects. Okay. Now, what happens with the set is you define it like this. Same example I'll take. Colors. So set is written like this. Now for set, because it is an unordered collection, which means it does not have index number assigned to each value. Correct? In this case, what will happen? In this case, one red and the second red, both of them will be considered as duplicate because identification is happening on the actual value. Okay, so ultimately how many, if I do it like this, ultimately how many values you think I have entered into the set? How many values do I have in this set now? Finally, 4. Because this red will be considered as a duplicate value, so it will just avoid it, it will ignore it. After this, if you try to display this set somewhere, it will ultimately show you only the 4 values, because it is considering red as duplicate, second red as duplicate. Fine. So before anything can get into this list, collection of values, it finds it. If it's a duplicate, it ignores it, avoids it. All right. So that is the simple concept of the list and set. List is ordered collection, which means it allows duplicates. So for you, the basic utility of having an ordered collection, the reason for this ordered collection is that only sometimes we want to allow duplicate values, right? Let's say if I have to, if I tell you that, okay, prepare a list of all the, countries who have won Cricket World Cup in last 30 years. Now there can be the same company which is repeated twice, and in this kind of a list I want to show the company twice, right? So in that case you should use a list. But if I tell you that, okay fine, I just want to understand and give me a list of countries which have never won a World Cup, there I don't need to do a repeat. There I just need to show a list of unique records, that these are the countries who have never won a World Cup, or these are the countries who have always won a World Cup, something like that, right? Got this thing? So depending on your requirement, you will choose whether you want to use a list or a set. Clear? Is everyone okay with that? So these are the basic data types. I will not get into too much of the details, and let's do an example, and then you will start understanding things also. So we have talked about primitives, subject, list, set. If you understand these 4 things properly at this point of time, I think we are good to go ahead and do 1 or 2 small examples and see how it works. All right. But before we go into the examples, there is another thing that we will need to understand. Is a class. Okay, what is a class?
Collection of objects.
Collection of objects. Okay. And anyone else? What is a class? Okay, let's break this class concept. Okay, let's understand what is a class, and I'll try to simplify it for you. So class is basically think of it as a container which will contain a class name. It will have some variables defined, and if it will have some functions or methods. Okay, what happens is so you create a class, you put certain methods into that, and you put certain variables into that, and you give a class name. Now why do we do this? We do this so that we can call that class somewhere else, alright, and through that class I can call that method, right? So I don't have to then go ahead and write the complete program everywhere. I can define this thing, and I can then reuse the class or reuse the methods wherever I want. I can call that class and I can call the method. Okay, so some function I can call it again and again, that sort of thing. Okay. So basically when you are designing a class, you should see that you have a class name, you have variables defined, right, which are to be used in the class, and then you have methods. You cannot directly call a variable somewhere else, you have to call a method. Method is what will do something, right? So this is what needs to be defined. For people who do not understand what is a class, just understand this thing. This is good starting point for you to start with. People who understand what is a class, who have done the class concepts in some other programming language, I think they are pretty good. they know what class is. But for others, this is it, simple thing. So class is where you write a program. So in that program there will be the first thing. So for class you have to define the name. In that program you'll have to define a few variables, and then you'll have to define a few methods, right? Let's say your variables can be a equals 40 and b equals 60, and your method can be c equals a plus b print c. This can be method, or only this can be method, right? So what you want to do, that is the method. So that's fine. Now what we are going to do for our custom controller, I told you we are going to work with a custom controller, right? So this custom controller is basically where you write all the code, all the programming thing for your page. So for custom controller we are going to create a class, okay, design a class and call that as a controller on the Visualforce page, so that you can call the methods also on the Visualforce page. So let's do an example to make things simpler for you. Give me a moment, let me log in into Salesforce. All right. So before you can start creating a Visualforce page that uses a custom controller, first of all you'll have to create a class, okay, and that class will be called as a custom controller on the Visualforce page. Got the logic? So how do you create a class? You just go to setup, scroll down a little, go to develop, Apex classes. This is what you have to go and click on. Setup, develop, Apex classes, okay, and then start creating your own class. Click on new. Give a name to the class, and the class has to be defined as public or private or global, okay. A public, any class that you want to call somewhere else needs to be a public class. So I told you that this is something which we are going to call on the Visualforce. It has to be a public class. Private class can only be called within that class. It cannot be called outside, okay. So private class is something that you don't need at this point of time, but just for your understanding, private class can be used inside that particular class only. It cannot be used outside the class. Now, because this is a class which I'm going to call as a Visualforce controller, so I have to make sure that this is a public class, okay. So public class, give the name of the class C1 or whatever you want. Now write the code inside it. I say string hello equals hello, how are you? Okay, variable defined, class name defined. Now what do I need? I need a method, because you cannot call a variable on that Visual Force page. Wherever you want to call, you will have to call a method. Method is what will perform some action, whatever, right? So I define a method, because this method is again something which I'm going to call outside this class. This also has to be public. Okay. Now whenever you define a method, you have to define a return type of the method. What will your method return? So my method will return a string. I am defining a method to display this variable's value in the Visual Force page. So what will be the return type? String. It's going to return string. Okay. Get is the method type. So if you want to take the value from this program and display it on a Visual Force page, you have to use a method type get, and M1 is the method name. So on call of this M1 method, I am instructing return hello, return the value of hello. Sorry. So if someone calls this method M1, I'm suggesting it to return the value of hello. That is what I'm asking this method to do. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create a Visual Force page. Save this. Your class is ready, right? Your class is ready with a string and it has a method also. Now go and create a Visual Force page. Okay. So now I create a new Visual Force page and I will use the class that I have defined as a controller here. So this time what you have to do, you just have to call that class as a controller here. Now you don't write custom controller, you simply write controller equals name of the class. Class name is C1, right? And then you write you can call the method here M1. When I call this method, what will it return? It will return hello. Let's see if it returns hello. Hello is a string that has another value. Hello, how are you? That is the value of that string. That is it. Got this? So a simple class, small one, and a small method called on the Visual Force page. So this is how the connectivity is done. Got this? Clear, everyone? Okay. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna keep it till here. So I just want you guys to get a little more familiar with writing a small class and then calling the thing here. So today you can just work on this kind of small example, maybe work with a primitive or something. How to use S objects in this, we will take that in tomorrow's session, right? So just go through the basics of this programming that I have discussed, and you saw how simple it is, right? To write something in a class and then call that thing on the Visual Force page, right? So today we are still dealing with the primitive thing. Tomorrow we'll start talking on the S object part. Alright. So we will continue tomorrow, and we are gonna start tomorrow again the same time, 6:30 PST, and that's it.